11 years ago, America began its war on terror. And today in Afghanistan, a U.S. war continues to be waged. My current guest has a very unique perspective on what has happened and continues to take place there. Joining me now to talk more about this topic is journalist and author Jerry Van Dyke. Mr. Van Dyke wrote a book called Captive: My Time as a Prisoner of the Taliban. Thank you for joining RT.
Thank you, Maria.
Mr. Van Dyke, as I mentioned, the war on terror began some 11 years ago, and U.S. troops, according to President Barack Obama, are expected to fully withdraw by the end of 2014. Is that a sign of victory or defeat in the so-called war on terror?
I don't think it's a sign of neither one. I think it's a sign that the U.S. public is tired of this. We initially went in for one specific reason, and that was to dismantle the government of the Taliban and to destroy Al-Qaeda. Now, people ask, why are we still there? How many Al-Qaeda are there? Under President Bush and in the early part of the Obama administration, we heard the numbers 50. There may be 50 Al-Qaeda left in Afghanistan. Are we there because of 50 Al-Qaeda members? No, it has morphed into something far larger than that. Is it because the former Soviet Union, what we'll call the stands, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and Tajikistan, have the largest untapped oil and natural gas reserves in the world? If you talk to the Afghans, if you talk to the Taliban, you'll say, oh, that's why the United States wants to stay here. People say it's because we want to surround Iran. We have bases in the Gulf. We have bases once before in Iraq. We certainly have them in Afghanistan. Do we want Afghanistan and Pakistan not to go to war with one another? Neither the Bush administration nor the Obama administration has been straight with the American public about that. And finally, we are responsible, along with other nations, for creating the very people against whom we are now fighting. These were all allies of the United States and its allies during the 1980s. We haven't been straight with the American public why what we have created, which evolved in some cases into parts of which evolved into Al-Qaeda, and are we trying to dismantle that?
Can you tell me what the war on terror looks like through the eyes of the Taliban?
No one's ever asked me that. It's a very good question, very interesting question. When I was a newspaper reporter in Afghanistan in the 1980s, the New York Times, when we were tied with some of the members of the Taliban today, we called them the Mujahideen, which means holy warriors. The Taliban told me that we are the sons and the grandsons of the Mujahideen. When I was captured by the Taliban and when I was in prison, I had to listen for hours and hours and hours to Taliban recruitment tapes and suicide recruitment tapes. They talk of, or they sing or chant of, Pashtun history, Pashtun geography, Pashtun poetry. This is a nationalist movement in their view. They are simply trying to free themselves of foreign infidel invaders exactly like their fathers and grandfathers in order to have what they feel is a proper Islamic government. The Taliban have become somewhat different. And that is, it's a result of their ties to Al-Qaeda, which is comprised of foreigners, primarily Arabs, Egyptians, Saudis, Chechens, Uzbeks, those from Western China, and even some from Europe. So Al-Qaeda is a different entity entirely. It is strictly interested in an international jihad. But the Taliban have become, because of their ties to Al-Qaeda and because of a 24/7 news cycle, they have become far more international. But deep down, in their hearts, they're interested in one thing, and that is an Islamic government and a Pashtun Islamic government. Now, Pashtun, I don't want to make this too complicated for viewers, but for them, the Pashtuns are Afghanistan, and they were at war before we came with what we call the Northern Alliance, the Tajiks. These are different ethnic groups in the north. So this is also an element here. There's an ethnic war at play here as much as anything else. But deep down, more than anything else, they want a unified Pashtun land. They want an Afghanistan that is deeply Muslim. Their interest ultimately is certainly not to attack the United States. But because of their exposure to the international world now, they're far more capable of trying to go across to Soviet Central Asia, to expand perhaps into Iran. Yeah, that element is there.
You were held hostage 45 days by the Taliban, correct? What was that experience like for you?
Frightening, humbling,
what did you learn that you didn't know about them?
I thought initially I would be killed immediately. But what I learned and what surprised me was that even though I was a prisoner, even though I lived in constant fear, that I was also treated with respect, and I was treated as a guest. Because, and this gets to the heart of your question, ultimately, tribal law, Pashtun tribal law, called Pashtunwali, tribal codes, take precedence over Islam. That deep down, they are Pashtuns, they are members of tribes more than they are Muslims. And I think that's one reason why I survived. I'm not sure why I survived.
And why did they let you go after 45 days?
I still don't know the answer.
You don't know the answer?
I'm trying to find out. I get many.
What did they say to you once they were unlocking the chains from your arms?
They said, "Congratulations on escaping death." I dare say this, I will. That about a year ago, I got a call from someone, a foreigner, European, and he asked me to go down to an apartment in New York. Two men who were Pashtuns from Pakistan, here invited by the State Department, on their way back to Pakistan, getting ready to catch a flight. The very first question they asked me was, "Who kidnapped you? The Taliban or the government?" My jailer said to me, not a shot would be fired in Afghanistan without the backing of the Pakistani government. So were the Taliban in touch with the government? Did the government of Pakistan know I was there? Did the government of Pakistan intervene and ultimately save me? Did Jalaluddin, the Haqqani network that we are at war with, and with which I lived in the 1980s, and his name I used constantly to try and save me, and who I was trying to get to because I thought by getting to Haqqani I could find out about Al-Qaeda, did he ultimately hold on to that tribal law and save me? I've heard so many different things. That's why it's a very murky, complicated place, and the war is far, far different from the way we perceive it in the media.
Speaking of tribes, what are U.S. intelligence capabilities among the tribes? Do you believe that Washington has enough knowledge when it comes to language and cultural experience of the particular regions in Afghanistan that need to be fully understood?
There was a General Flynn, I think his name was, and this was about 2009, 2010, who was in Chief of Intelligence under then military General Stanley McChrystal, who said, and I quote, "We are flying blind in Afghanistan." How many Pashtun speakers are there? When you find out in the U.S. intelligence community, when you talk to, for example, interpreters, you find out that there's a huge underground network of interpreters, all of whom have to pay bribes before they can work with the American soldiers. Who controls these interpreters? Well, I'm not sure that they're completely free at all. The Taliban can easily infiltrate this. This was my own experience. I don't think that the U.S. intelligence capabilities are nearly what they're portrayed to be. However, when you get to someplace like Pakistan, I think it's possibly a bit different. We have drones overhead. We're constantly, under President Obama, we've ratcheted up the number of drone attacks. Those drones, and I've been under drones, how do they know where to attack? You have to have the information on the ground. Where does that information come from? It comes from working closely in tandem with Pakistani military intelligence, that they will choose to attack there and attack there. Why, after so many years, have we not been able to kill the leader of the Haqqani network, or Mullah Omar, or Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, the three leaders of the Taliban? Or why did we have to go in and kill Osama bin Laden? Why didn't the Pakistani intelligence tell us where these people were? Maybe they knew and maybe they don't know, but I happen to think they absolutely know. But we have to have that intelligence on the ground, and I think it's far better in Pakistan than in Afghanistan, but it comes because Pakistan works closely with these people, and they work closely with the United States on who they want to attack. They want to allow the United States to attack.
I started this interview by asking you about Afghanistan, but I want to wrap it up by asking you about something you said about Pakistan, because you recently said that you believe that the U.S. and its allies are fighting a proxy war against Pakistan.
Oh, without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
Oh, without a doubt.
That could create an even more dangerous dynamic, clearly, in that area of the world, if they still don't know what they're doing in Afghanistan.
Well,
can't figure it out correctly.
Right. Is Pakistan our ally, or is it our enemy? Now, the Taliban, and you take someone like former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, who said that the Haqqani network is an arm of the Pakistani ISI, Pakistani military intelligence. That we, the United States, have paid at least $12 billion, have given in aid and different forms, at least $12 billion to the Pakistani military since 9/11. But the Pakistani military, according to former Admiral Mike Mullins and everyone else, is backing the Taliban. So we are supplying money to the very people that are providing this money to the Taliban to attack U.S. forces. Why would Pakistan back the Taliban? What is Pakistan's interest in Afghanistan? No single Afghan legislature in the history of Afghanistan has accepted the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Afghanistan was the only nation in the world to vote against Pakistan's admittance to the United Nations in 1947 over one single thing, the border. In 1893, the British, when they ruled India, created what is called the Durand Line. They do not accept the fact that the land that once belonged to them, that the British took away, should belong to Pakistan. And this is deep down at the heart of this particular never-ending war, in the middle of which is the United States and its soldiers, who continue to die over a war that once started out against Al-Qaeda, which has morphed into something far deeper, far more complicated. There's an old Afghan saying, Afghanistan is very easy to enter, but it's very hard to leave. We're not leaving by 2014. We'll still be there.
And we'll leave it right there. Jerry Van Dyke, thank you very much for your time.